Audio recording.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to slowly get started here. We still have people joining. We have 148 ladies on the call right now. That's super awesome. Sorry for those of you who are on early as we had technical challenges. And then I think I was yelling at my dog because I'm in the Netherlands and it is 9 o'clock here at night and he's tired. Okay. So I think we should get started. Welcome to Cultivating Your Voice and Brainwashing Your Inner Impostor, a workshop for women in STEM. This webinar is co-sponsored today by the Science Network of the Union of Concerned Scientists and by 500 Women Scientists. If you don't know who one of those are, you probably know who at least one is because you found this webinar, but go check out the other one that you don't know because both of these organizations are really awesome. My name is Kelly Ramirez. I am a researcher postdoc in the Netherlands. I did my PhD in Colorado, but I've been in Europe for a few years now. I am also the co-founder of 500 Women Scientists, and I will be moderating today and guiding questions, introducing the speakers, etc. If you guys have questions, there's a chat down below. You can use this at any time, whether the questions are for technical difficulties or regarding the content that the speakers are speaking on today. So just feel free to always be chatting there with each other. You can start a chat on the right if you have individuals that you want to talk to. Okay, so now that you know where the chat window is, today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, having doubts in one's academic accomplishments, and fearing being exposed as a fraud, and also cultivating your voice, especially as an early career scientist or underrepresented scientist in STEM. We're really happy to have two speakers today. We're sorry that Christine O'Connell is not able to join us, unfortunately. Something kept her away today, but we still have two speakers and they're gonna cover her slides. We're still using her slides since there's some really great content that we're gonna be covering today. Okay, next slide. So I'll introduce our speakers in just a second, but first I want to go over some community guidelines. While we're all here together, we now have 192 people on the call. That's awesome. We want to hear as many voices as possible rather than just a few. Don't be afraid to chat in that window that I talked about right here. Oh, the implicit bias. Okay, sorry. It's hard to multitask with all these windows. But don't be afraid. No question is a bad question. Just type away. Consider your identities and associated privileges when speaking. Think about who you are and who else is in the room with us or isn't in the room and isn't represented. So don't only think about your own questions. Maybe think about what someone else would be thinking about as well. Don't make assumptions. Share from your own experience and ask questions if you don't know. Use the chat box, again. And treat others with respect. So it's really great to have so many people on the call listening in. One last feature I want to show you. Up at the top, there's this little icon with a person raising their hand. The speakers may do some quick little polls, ask you if you agree or disagree. You can use that to raise your hand and comment. We want this to be as interactive as possible. I know that it's hard just with a our faces in the chat that it may be a little difficult to feel interactive, but we want to use these tools to help you feel as comfortable and like we are all here together. Finally, some speakers will be doing polls. These will show up on your screen over the slide, so don't worry about that if they talk about that. They'll be brought in for you and you can click on them and vote. Okay, so that is all the information, and now I want to tell you a bit about our speakers that we have today. So just because Christine isn't here doesn't mean we don't want to acknowledge her, because her content she put together is great. She's an assistant professor of science communication at the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science and at the School of Journalism in Stony Brook at Stony Brook University. So the two ladies we have on the call with us today both come from the School of Mines. Amy Landis is a professor and presidential faculty fellow of diversity, inclusion, and access. She joined Mines in August of 2017 as the first presidential faculty fellow for access, attainment, and diversity. Previously, she served as director for Clemson University's Institute for Sustainability. Dr. Landis has spent her career promoting and supporting women and underrepresented minorities in STEM. At the School of Mines, Dr. Landis leads the President's Council on Diversity, Inclusion, and Access, whose mission is to establish a strategic plan for access, attainment, inclusion, and diversity at Mines. Then we have Pragnya Aranki, Civil and Environmental Engineering Research Faculty from the School of Mines. She has a doctoral degree in chemical engineering with expertise in sustainability and life cycle assessment. She's served as the Deputy Director for Research at Clemson Institute for Sustainability in 2016, and at Mines she leads research on DI&A best practices in higher education and is instrumental in conducting DI&A council activities and developing a strategic plan pertaining to diversity, inclusion, and access issues at Mines. So we're so grateful that they can be on the call today, and now we're ready to get into it. You should be able to see them in the bottom screen, and I'm going to take my video off and they're going to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That's a really nice introduction. We really appreciate it. So thank you everyone for joining us. We're so excited to have you. I can see that we have, now we're up to 224, and I'm seeing from the comments we've got rooms of people with multiple. So, who knows, maybe we're up to 300 participants. So we're so excited that you're here and that you want to be part of this discussion. We are not kidding when we say this is going to be interactive, so be ready. We're actually going to ask you to get up out of your seats during this webinar. All right, so first up, we want to get to know you. So what we're going to do is ask you a few questions, and you're going to use the raise your hand. The first is a poll, and so our first poll is tell us about your position. Where are you in your STEM career? So please go ahead and click. All right, and then you can see the second question. We want to know, what's your field in STEM? Where are you working in right now? And you all should be able to see these results populate live along with us so we can see our community here. And apologies to those of you who are in a large room where you're multiple people and you only get one vote. Great, thanks. So it looks like we got a lot of scientists here, a pretty even split amongst grad students, postdocs, all the different sorts of positions, as you all can see. So one more question then. Who has a job interview, promotion, or some sort of event coming up where you're going to have to present yourself? You're going to have to speak about your own accomplishments. Wow. That's a lot of people. Wow. Nice, everyone. Okay, so we are a bunch of scientists and engineers We are all over the place in terms of stage of our career, a mix of grad students, faculty, government employees, and a decent percent of us have something coming up in the near future where we're going to have to present ourselves. So one other get to know you activity. This one we're going to use at the top of the screen, the little hand, raise your hand button. So I'm going to ask you some questions so we can get to know one another a little more. So if your answer is yes, raise your hand. So we'll see roughly out of 240. And again, apologies to the rooms of folks who are going to have to figure out whether or not you want to raise your hand, but definitely maybe discuss that amongst yourselves. So show of hands. How many of you have been helped or mentored by someone in a leadership position? Click the raise your hand button if yes. The question was, how many of you have been helped or mentored by someone in a leadership position? Right now we're at 148 people have raised their hands. Increasing. So about half of you, at least easily half of you, have been mentored by someone in a leadership position. Okay, so next question. I think you have to lower your hands first.
And then use the same function to do this for the next question.
Yep, we'll start again. Okay, so how many of you feel like the deck is stacked against you to get ahead or get promoted? Raise your hand if you feel like the deck is stacked against you to get ahead or get promoted. Raise your hand with the button at the top of the screen if you agree with that statement. We're at 87. Not really sure what that means. If you have some sort of sense, the deck's stacked against me to get ahead because of any reason. One more time, this question is, I feel like the deck is stacked against me in order to get ahead or be promoted. We're around 100, we're hovering around 100 of you. So roughly maybe a third of you feel like for some reason or another, the deck's stacked against me. So we have a couple more in getting to know you. So about a third of us feel like the deck is stacked against us in order to get ahead. Lower your hand. So you have to click the button again to lower your hand to start over again. So next question. Who's felt that they've worked harder than that? They have to work harder than your colleagues to be accepted because of your race or gender? Raise your hand if you feel like I have to work harder than the majority of my colleagues because of my race or gender. This one's climbing up. We're at 130. Possibly. Yes, sorry, I just saw that. What about sexual orientation, gender identity? Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I have to work harder because of those factors. So look, we're seeing maybe half of us from the results that we're seeing feel like we have to work harder than the majority of our colleagues to prove ourselves because of our race, gender, sexual identity, ethnicity. Yep. Okay, next, let's do a couple more questions, getting to know us. So lower your hands again. And let's start another one. All right, my notes are right here in front of me. Okay, next common ground. How many of you have been talked over in a meeting by a male colleague? Raise your hand using the button above if you have been talked over in a meeting by a male colleague. So,
165 now.
Yeah, easily half of us.
This question's popular.
And climbing, unfortunately. All right, let's do two more. So lower your hand again, where half of us have been talked over by a male colleague. Lower your hand. And how many of you have been called sweetie or honey or some other condescending, moniker at work? How many of you, raise your hand via the button above, have been called sweetie or honey or something else like that at work, in a work setting? 114 of you so far. Agnes, have you?
A no on this one. No, so far at least.
Thankfully. Definitely a yes for me.
I'm thankful. But the previous one, yes. All of that, yes, so far, but this one, no.
Okay. So what about a third of us have been called sweetie or honey? I am sorry for all of us. Okay, last one. Who fears, remember, lower your hand first and then we'll start again. So last question on getting to know us. Who fears sounding or looking stupid when giving a talk?
Me, right here.
And again, this one, raise your hand if you ever feared sounding or looking stupid while giving a talk.
$65.
Wow. So possibly half of us have feared sounding or looking stupid while giving a talk. Okay, so a quick summary. We're looking at about half of us have experienced some sort of discrimination or uncomfort in the workplace easily. A lot of us are concerned about, how we speak or are worried about how we sound when we speak. And I think it was about a third of us have a mentor and someone that we felt like we could talk to who's in a leadership position. So as you know, this talk is about cultivating your voice, communication, and banishing your inner imposter. And I don't know if anybody caught Kelly's introduction, but I think she misread some letters and read brainwashing your imposter, and I kind of like that. I think maybe we should change our title. We should just brainwash our imposter, our inner imposter, so that she's not an imposter anymore, and I can just make her go away.
Yeah, Amy and I had a little moment when Kelly said that, so yeah, that's interesting.
So imposter syndrome, if you haven't heard of it, is a phenomenon described by Clamp and Imes in 1978, where individuals are unable to internalize their accomplishments. You feel like you're a fraud. You're constantly worried that you're going to be exposed. And the reason that we've started doing this workshop with Christine is that we have noticed that there are ways that our inner imposter can influence the way that we as individuals communicate. And we wanted to help women in particular be more aware of these subtle ways that our inner imposter is actually having an impact on our lives and our careers. And so our first step is let's find out if we're all imposters. do we all think that we're fakes and frauds? So go to this URL right here. It's underneath I think you click the link right there, right? It should take you to a quick imposter test. Take the test. We're going to be quiet for a moment so you can take the test and report your score. So you see the ranges here. Report your score. Yeah. We're watching the numbers on the poll to sort of give you all time to take the test. So I'll repeat the advice on the chat. Click the imposter test in that box on the left, and it'll open up the web page where for a quick 20-question Clance and I'm imposter test. And then at the bottom of that, you're just going to click submit, and it will give you your score. And then we'd like for you to tell us what was your score on this poll on the right. We'll give you a bit more time because it looks like maybe only a third of you have finished the test. So again, on the how do you submit your results, just respond to the poll right here on the right of the screen. Click one of the buttons to tell us what your imposter score was. As you can see, we've got a wide range of scores. I'm seeing some people say it was worse than I imagined, and maybe some of you are surprised that you got a low score. We've done this activity with groups all around the country, and the Clance and IMS have done these tests with lots of people, and these are very common results. Lots of people experience mild, significant, and imposterism. So my score is on the high. I'm in the 81 to 100. Do you remember what yours was?
Yeah, I think I'm in the 61 to 80 range.
Mm-hmm. And so, this is not uncommon. You're not alone. Lots of folks, look right here, lots of other folks feel like they're imposters. We have a lot of really talented people on this webinar, and you're not actually imposters. I score 81 to 100, and I'm a full professor. I have awards, I publish papers, I've gotten lots of research grants, and despite all these accolades, I still feel like an imposter, and that hasn't changed over my career. I have learned to manage my inner imposter so that she doesn't impact my success, but she's still there and nagging me. So you're not alone. And what we want to do now is have a look at, if we could take the polls off, thanks. We want to have a look at the ways in which your imposter might influence your communication.
So we're going to show you 2 cover letters, ones that you use to apply to jobs and such. We're going to show you 2. We're going to give you a total of 2 minutes, 1 minute on each example, and we're going to report back on it. So there are 2 cover letters, Jane and John. When you look at these, just consider the following. Which cover letter is more impressive? Why? What phrase has the most impact or is the most helpful in your review? Or what phrase is the least helpful? So as you read through these, keep these things in mind because we'll ask you for your responses on a quick poll once you're done reading these. So we're going to put up the first cover letter now for 1 minute. Just take your time. Use full screen. You can see the font better and just scroll through them. We'll give you 1 minute for the first one.
So if you don't have a piece of paper out, grab a piece of paper and a pen because you want to jot down some notes.
Yep.
And here we go. You have 1 minute. So this is John. Read the letter. Think about the phrases.
What phrase has the most impact in the cover letter?
"30 seconds. "10 seconds. Time's up.
That's my loud timer, sorry. Okay, so move on to the second cover letter. This is Jane Smith. Go ahead and start reading this.
Same thing. What's impressive? What are some issues that you have with Jane's letter? Jot down some notes.
If you're having trouble with the font, please try to go into full screen mode as you read this on your computer. You will be able to see better.
And don't stress about it. If you're struggling, to read the small font, it's 10 seconds left, and we'll go through the major differences.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so there we go. So we'd like you to talk to us through this poll on the screen about what did you find impressive about John's material.
And here's one thing to remember. If you want to put in multiple answers, you have to separate them by a comma because as you put in multiple answers without doing that, your answers will be replaced with the latest one. So just use commas to separate whatever you think the answers are on the same line.
So we're seeing a couple. I saw a bunch of dollars and numbers. Great observations. John's letter had a lot of numbers.
List accomplishments objectively.
Very good. I saw a couple of confidence. Some
on the negative side of things, hyper-confident, yeah.
The confidence.
Very confident.
Came across from your comments.
Yeah, there's a spectrum of confidence, I guess, that's showing through.
So strong words and seeing some comments about strong words, really good observation. So Strong words. Sorry if we didn't broadcast the results. Here you can scroll through and see what everyone else is saying. And the use of I, that's a good one. Strong words, use of I. Great observations. All right, let's have a discussion about Jane. What were your notes on Jane? So and we'll grab another, just a moment. I'll pull the other poll up here. All right, talk to us about your, about Jane. Passive. Okay, so I saw a couple of giving away credit. Thanking other people, but related to that is giving away credit. And yep, there's a bunch of comments on that.
Repeating that she was fortunate, so placing emphasis on luck.
Luck. Good one.
I see some teamwork coming in, not giving enough credit to herself.
I see a lot of passive. There were a couple no numbers. Saw a comment in there about Jane literally wrote what I wrote in my cover letter. So what we often hear from folks in addition to this is there are a few people who tend to like Jane's letter better. They like that she seems collaborative, that she does give credit to others. But overwhelmingly, when we've gone through this exercise with folks, the majority of people like John's material. They prefer John's cover letter, even if it was maybe hyper confident. So there's a much smaller percentage of people who tend to like Jane's cover letter compared to John's. So let's talk about this in the context of, imposter and cultivating your voice. So you all hit on the major differences, and to sum them up, Jane uses passive voice, which you all said, and you all also noticed that John uses active voice. And those two changes in the letter, with the addition of probably having some numbers from John versus Jane, made all the difference. So using active voice when you're writing as well as when you're speaking make a huge difference. Now, the big reveal here is that the letters were actually the same person. The letters are crafted from research that's been done in this space, but also literally from a woman that I mentor. Jane was her first draft, and John was her second draft, where she changed everything in those letters to be more active, to have more confidence, to stop giving credit away to other people, because you know what? She got that grant. Why should she give it away to her chair? Because it was actually her grant. So, this is one way, one concrete and real way that your inner imposter can help you write a cover letter that gives your credit away to other people, or if you think about how you're presenting yourself in the written form, how you can use active voice to minimize that imposter. Yeah. So the other element of the cover letters here that we wanted to bring up is that it's not all you. It's not all on you. Just because Jane wrote her cover letter and using passive voice and then rewrote it using active voice doesn't mean that it's all on her to make changes and make sure she gets hired or gets promoted with that one cover letter. There's a lot of other factors that come into play when we're looking at materials and we're looking at people. So you may have heard of implicit bias. Implicit bias is where we all perceive and treat people differently based on their social and cultural identity group memberships. So that relates to the cover letter because there have been a bunch of studies out there that show if we give folks the same materials, right, but all we do is change the name. So we give you the same cover letter, but we change the name from Jane to John, whether or not you're a man or a woman, regardless of your ethnicity, you are likely to judge Jane and John differently because of your implicit bias. So studies have been done on this that look at recommendation letters. So, when you're applying for a position, folks have to write recommendation letters for you. And studies have reviewed tons and tons of recommendation letters, and letters written for men have far more professional statements than letters written for women. They have more personal statements, and you'll see some of the same things about fewer numbers for women, more numbers written for men. When people are asked to review CVs or perhaps even cover letters, this was a study for faculty applicants to an academic institution, and the committees were given the exact same CVs, but all that was done was change the name, right, from a male name to a female name. So literally they have the exact same qualifications. All that you had to do is change the name, and that meant men are preferred 2-1 over women, and that in the discussion that the committee would have when they're talking about these candidates, 4 times more reservations are expressed for the female candidate. Remember, same qualifications, same CV. All we did was swap John for Jane. We didn't do this. This was other people's work. Similar, it's not all about gender. Similar studies looked at if you replace a white-sounding name with a non-white-sounding name. And essentially, you see similar results. White-sounding names receive 50% more callbacks for interviews. And if you look at, there's some studies out there looking at gender expression and gender identity. And so one study literally sent the same person to job interviews, right? The same person, and all they did was swap apparel so that the people they were interviewing with would associate them with either they literally had like a gay and proud t-shirt on, or they had the example would be like, I'm wearing a Denver Broncos t-shirt, so that the people interviewing them placed them into an identity category, but the person was exactly the same person, and they did nothing, they tried to do nothing different between their interactions with employers. And results show that employers spent less time, used fewer words, and acted more negatively to people who were wearing some sort of identification showing gay and proud.
And some of you have asked about the references. We do have references at the end, and you'll have access to all of those later.
Mm-hmm. All of these are different studies. They are in here, so we'll make sure you have these. So the other takeaway here is that results are consistent for both male and female, right? So just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you may not have these same implicit biases. You may still prefer men over women 2-1 if you're reviewing CVs. Okay, so we want to say again, it's not about you. So we're going to move through this. These are some of the more details on the letters of recommendation study that we showed you, and some details again with the references on the CVs that we just discussed. So we can share those references with you. And again, this is because of implicit bias. But we wanted you to have a tool to follow up. So take the Harvard Implicit Bias Test. There are a bunch of them. There's gender science. There's gender science, there are skin tone, there's a bunch of different implicit bias tests, and it's really insightful. It's really hard, but we highly recommend you take it so that you have a sense of what is your implicit bias, because we have to be the first step. We need to start, if we're part of search committees, changing or at least acknowledging our implicit bias. Another quick note, the reason that we give you a short time frame to review those letters, and the reason that we made it difficult is because those are factors that enhance your unintentional and implicit bias. When you are under a time crunch, when you're given vague criteria, that's when your implicit bias is likely to be at its worst. And so that's why we gave you limited time and we didn't give you very specific instructions. So on the other side of things, again, we want to recognize that all of these challenges that face women and underrepresented groups, it's not all on us as individuals to change. There's an institutional side of change that really needs to happen. And so we have one example, but hopefully we're starting to see these examples all around the country. So at Minds, what Pragya and I are doing is really revamping. We've revamped the way that we hire because we know that we have to educate our colleagues on implicit bias. And we're doing that. We do implicit bias workshops. We have implemented rubrics to help minimize these areas where there are possibly ambiguous criteria. We track, candidates throughout the process, and we've actually started requiring, as many other institutions are doing, a statement of contributions to diversity and inclusion, so that everyone can demonstrate how they're going to help the institution be a more inclusive place. So there's a bunch of institutional practices that can happen, and you can be part of this from an institutional side, and you can also be part of change as an individual. So just an example, because it's both horrifying and shocking. This is an example from the diversity and inclusion statement that we've seen after we started making these changes. I'm not kidding you. Literally, this is on a statement. So as of 2017, people still think this way. I'll read it for you in case you're not reading it. This person who wanted to be a faculty member in the United States, who wanted to teach students and be your colleague, wrote that male and females are inherently different in cognition and personality. For example, male students perform better at math problem solving and sports, while female students do better on verbal articulation and cooking. Usually, I can't see your faces, but when we do this with a group, we see a lot of people who look like they want to throw up or just sort of stunned. So.
And I see the reactions coming into the chat, which I can imagine your faces. It's horrifying.
Yeah. But this still happens. And you know what? As an institution, you may not ever know that someone holds these opinions if you don't ask, if you don't make this part of the dialogue and discussion. And so that's why institutional change is critical. This person could have a fantastic CV. This person could have wonderful service record as a faculty member. But if you don't make this part of your criteria in terms of hiring new people, promoting new people, this sort of stuff, as we've seen, can be hidden for years. You may never see it. And none of us want to hire someone with these opinions, right? And I've seen lots of questions about the details, and I can't give those out. I can't give some of those details out. Okay, one more quick thought on implicit bias and sort of what you may be working against. So this is a pretty popular paper from Nature that looked at materials, sort of competency for postdoc fellowship applicants. So what this figure shows, you see the two red circles. This figure is showing us that men, in essence, only have to publish about 30 articles, but women have to publish around 100 to be deemed the same competency level as a man. So there's this huge gap in terms of what we expect women to do before they're even deemed equivalent to men. This is shocking. And so this is one of the reasons that we say it's not all on you. You don't have to change everything about you. You don't have to change a single thing about you. But what we want to do in the rest of this workshop is talk about just recognizing some of the things that we do that could, especially our inner imposter, could be doing that are sabotaging things. Because you know what? The deck is stacked against many women and many underrepresented folks in STEM. So talk to us via the chat about what ways, via the poll's going to come over in a second. What ways does your inner imposter influence your communication? So we gave you a couple examples, right? You saw how an imposter came through in a cover letter. Are there other ways, as you're communicating, that your imposter can come out?
Again, as you type the answers, be sure to separate by commas if you're typing multiple answers, and then on the same line, just put in your multiple answers. And I'll broadcast the results so you can scroll through these as you type.
I saw apologizing all the time. That's a good one.
Doubt.
I constantly apologize for everything. Even if I got an award, I'm apologizing for it because that's what my imposter makes me do. That's a good one. Speaking up and speaking out and asking questions. We're seeing a bunch about those. And I'm seeing a few about credit. A lot of folks are saying, my imposter makes me attribute my success to someone else. I'm trying to give the credit away. Say I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done it without Pragya and Christine and everyone else. And that's true, but I'm also an equal part of it. holding back. I'm not going up for promotion. I'm not putting myself up. I might be taking too long to get that paper out.
Right. Not answering questions in meetings because of self-doubt. I saw some of those.
Okay.
Holding back, yes. See a lot of that. Okay.
All right. So what do we do about it? First, we are advocating that just recognize these ways that you're imposter and perhaps your communication connected to your imposter, how they impact you. Recognize that and make a conscious decision about whether or not and how you want to present yourself. You don't have to change, but what we're just terrified of is that, women in STEM go through their lives not ever knowing that deck is stacked against them and not ever realizing that they do have some choice here. And owning that choice. I'm going to present myself and I'm going to just keep apologizing for stuff because it's just what I do, and that's fine. But to recognize how some of these giving all the credit away could be perceived by others. That's our goal here, is not to change you, but our goal is to just help folks recognize, and then if it's something that you think you'd like to change, to give you some tools to practice. So what we do in terms of communicating, I think these are standard communication practices. Know your audience. Who are they? Have a clear goal in mind. What do you want people to come away with? When you were in an interview, say, and you've got 30 minutes, right? Or if you're in an elevator and you have 2 to 5 minutes, if you want them to know 5 years worth of studying physics, that's not a realistic goal for a 5-minute conversation. So you need to always know your audience and always know your goal when you're speaking with people. And then know yourself. So what is it about me that I'm proud of? What is it about me that I want to convey to other people? Okay, so we're going to do an exercise here. Now, in this exercise, you're actually going to draw on the screen or try to write on the screen. So Kelly, or if you're on, there we go.
There it is.
Okay, so the bar at the left here, you can grab the pen tool, and we want you to tell us, who am I? You could use the text tool
or the pen tool.
The pen tool, whatever works.
Try writing on the screen.
There's 240 people, but tell us, and if that doesn't work for you, add it to the chat, but who am I? So I am a professor. I'm a mother.
I am a researcher. I'm a reader. I love to read. I'm a reader, I guess. I'm a dancer.
Try the text tool, folks. It looks like the writing isn't working very well, so see the text button and or post it in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a yogi. I'm a traveler. Probably is a Harry Potter fan.
Good one.
So knowing yourself is knowing all of these things about you. You already know it, but oftentimes we bring only Professor Amy or Professor Pranya to an event or to a job. And knowing which parts of me I want to bring and being comfortable bringing the many whos I am to a conversation and to work and being thoughtful about that will help you in your communication.
And we see that you're typing in the questions, the answers in the chat box, because I think that was a fun exercise, but because there's so many people, I guess we can just look here. We see a lot of answers coming in: vegan, activist, researcher, scientist,
Dancer.
cyclist, dancer. Oh, there's so many who's.
So here's another activity. Mm-hmm. You're going to need another sheet of paper. And so we want you to think about, let's do this exercise in the sense of I'd like to, whatever your next thing is. I'm applying for jobs, so, my audience is my search committee, or I have to give a talk next, and so my audience is the audience at my next talk. Think about who are those who's that I am that are holding me back, and who do I want to be for that audience and for that goal. So, my audience, I'm giving a keynote lecture next week. My audience is a bunch of scientists and engineers, and my goal is to engage them in the subject matter. And so who are the many who's that I am that hold me back? Jot those down. And who do I want to be for that instant? I often let the mother hold me back. So try to get a few things in both of these lists. Who holds you back? My imposter always holds me back. I really hate her a lot.
Mine too.
Race and race tradition holds me back. I saw that one in there.
Imposter holding you back. Some say age and inexperience holding you back.
Mm-hmm.
I relate to that.
So finish writing what you're on, and take a moment and look at your list and put yourself in someone else's shoes. Put yourself in your partner's shoes, your best friend's shoes, your bestie colleague's shoes, and what would that person say about you? What would they say is your greatest characteristic or your greatest skill? And is there a chance that one of the who's that's holding you back is actually, it's in your head? Would someone else say, you're not, what's one of those? Feeling smart. The who that holds me back is my imposter who tells me I'm not smart. But your friend or your partner might say, she's the smartest person I know. And so how many of the who's that hold you back are in your head or aren't real? Right. That's part of this exercise.
See, you see the answers switching to, they would say, I'm curious, confident, smart, loyal. Think about what they would say, right?
So I want to be mindful of our time, and we are getting near the end. So we're gonna really take just a moment on the stories, and we're not going to give our example, which is the opposite of telling stories. But anecdotes have a lot of power. So rather than saying a quick fact about me, embed that fact in a story, embed that thing in the story. So the activity here, which we're not going to have time to go through, but we'd like for you to think about doing it later, is we were going to have you list 5 qualities about yourself that best friend or that partner or that best colleague would say about you, and pick one of those that you'd like to tell a story around. We want you to frame a story around it, because when you are in that talk or in that 5-minute elevator meeting or in your interview and you convey that quality in a story, it sticks. Stories stick with people. But just telling you, I'm very strategic. You're not going to really remember probably that I'm strategic, even if that's what I want you to remember. You're going to remember that I'm strategic when I've told you a short story about how I have been strategic. So it's actually really related to behavioral interviews, right? So we encourage everyone, all of you, to have these stories in your pocket ready to go. I apologize, we don't have time for the activity. We want to do one more activity before our time is up. And so hopefully this will work.
Yeah.
Fazia and I have to stand up to do it. And you pick right now. If you're in a group, we want people to pick I'm A or B. If you're by yourself, it's okay, just pick right now. I'm going to be person A or I'm going to be person B. Okay, and then we're going to talk about body language and power dynamics. Okay, hopefully you can see.
Yeah, I think.
All right, so ready? Everybody decide who's person A, who's person B. If you're beside yourself, it's okay. Stand up anyway and decide if you're person A. Okay, so I'm going to be person A, Prodigy's going to be person B. So person A, I want you to show us with your body, how would you, I'm begging, person A is begging for money from person B, okay? So show us, what would that look like? Okay, so body language matters a lot here. I'm holding my hands out, I'm begging for money, I'm hunched in on myself, my shoulders are down, my eyes are down, your eyes might be down. the person that you're asking for money for, if you're B, and you're the person that's being asked for money, you are looking up. Your shoulders are back. You're probably standing straight.
Chest out, head up.
Because you're in a position of power. And so body language actually matters. I could ask for money from Pragya, especially if she's a funder, and not hunch my shoulders, right? I could still be doing that, but not in this passive way. So let's do another one, okay? So again, stay with person A and person B. Okay, so this time, person A is presenting someone with an important opportunity. So who's in the position of power in this one? This person A is presenting the opportunity, so they're in a position of power, right? And person B is the receiver. Person B is receiving the opportunity. And so oftentimes, especially your imposter, I would be like, oh, thanks, you know, I'm sort of like looking to the side. I might be brushing it off with my hand because my imposter says, I can't be worth this opportunity, so I'm going to brush it aside and not look directly at people. I'll turn my body away. But the person who's in the position of power
is kind of respectful and in a less position of power, so shriveling away maybe. So how can you balance the power dynamic? You can, again, same thing. You can make eye contact, straighten up, level up to the person who you're, you know, interacting with. These are some ways you can consciously make an effort to do this.
So we had more, but we realized we're out of time. So we're not going to go through them, but we want you to think both about your body language and how your imposter might influence your body language, and your language and your communication, and how your imposter can influence your communication. So we have a text-heavy list of different ways that you can manage your imposter and cultivate your voice. There's a bunch here. We are all about knowing what you're up against as an individual, knowing how and if the deck is stacked against you, and making a conscious decision about what I want to do about that. And I want to take a moment to talk about fake it till you make it, because it's not often what people think. Imposters tend to think that I have to fake expertise because you're already an imposter, right? That's not what fake it till you make it means. Fake it means fake confidence. Practice just being confident, not fake the expertise that you feel like you don't have. You've got it. Trust me. Your imposter is the one who's telling you you don't have it. Fake the confidence, because the more you practice that, the more you are going to look and sound less like an imposter on the outside. But it's okay if your imposter doesn't go away. I am 40 years old. I've been dealing with mine forever, and I still score the highest on the imposter scale. She hasn't gone away. I've just gotten better at managing her through my body language, through practice speaking, through practice self-promoting. And frankly, for me, my network is the really important piece that helps me manage my imposter. I text my girlfriends when I'm like, oh crap, I really feel like really feel awful right now. I can't do this. And my network is the one who brings my imposter out and helps the real Amy come back. So thank you. I apologize again that we're short on time, but if you have a moment, we are happy to entertain questions. And we'd love for your thoughts, if you'd like to post them in the chat here. We'd love for your thoughts and advice for others about ways that you can manage your imposter, cultivate your voice.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys so much for that presentation. Silent round of applause, I think, from everyone who's on the chat. Everyone seemed to be enjoying it a lot. We are going to go over time an extra 10 minutes with a question and answer and wrap up. If you have time to stick on, please do. If you don't, if there are important things conveyed, they will be all the information about today and the slides and references will be sent out in an email. So don't worry, you'll have all the resources. And our emails are in the slides, and I think they're easy to get it's easy to get a hold of all of us if you have questions. So please don't hesitate, whether you have a question about this talk today, or the Science Network and Union of Concerned Scientists, or 500 Women Scientists, and you want to join our groups, send us a message. Okay, so goodbye to people who have to jump off. Thank you for participating. And I think I'm going to start off the questions because there were some really good ones I think that were really important, and I don't want them to get lost. So the first question, and it came up a lot, and I think it's a really good point and something we talked about actually at our leadership meeting, the 500 Women Scientists leadership meeting in June. So this idea about the two cover letters and having a confident voice versus a passive voice. And someone pointed out, why is it wrong to have a passive voice? Why are we saying, okay, women, you just have to be this way and write your letter this way? Not even just women, anybody who writes passively or in a way that is not the standard, we tend to say, okay, you just have to make yourself that way. That I think that there are a lot of answers here. So do you guys want to take it and see how if anyone has a follow-up?
Sure. So again, that's a great question, and we get that quite often. And I'll just start with it. It sucks, first of all, because right now that's the way things are. So I think the crux of this matter is that we shouldn't have to change, and in order to not have to change ourselves, we have to help institutions. We don't have to help, but we could help, and what we are doing is helping institutions change and helping the broader culture change. Right now, chances are, if you submitted a cover letter with passive voice, you are going to be judged in a certain way. We are currently working on educating others on committees, but it's not the case. Not all universities are doing this yet, right? And so our point here is that you make a choice. It is not wrong to present yourself as a collaborator. It's not wrong to present yourself, certainly active voice is a stronger, voice, but it's not wrong to present yourself the way Jane did. She could have been a little clearer about some of the accomplishments, but why is it wrong to say, I do and am really thankful for all these collaborators that I have. What our goal here is to help you understand the current climate that we're in, right? Chances are you submitted that letter to an institution that hasn't been working with its members, with your potential future colleagues on managing implicit bias and understanding these types of things like how impostor influences and can change letters, and isn't using rubrics to help people get past, these implicit biases that they may have, then chances are you're going to be judged in that way. We're not saying that we shouldn't also work to change institutions. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, we want to work to change institutions.
We realize that the problem is institutional. It's, as Amy said, it sucks, it's cultural, but realize that the deck is already stacked against you, so you can make this empowered choice to be aware of the biases that are going on and address them, is what we are saying.
Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's a great start. And so first we have to think about, the deck is stacked against people. Depending on your situation, the deck will be stacked against you differently, and the best protection you can have or way to combat this is to educate yourself and know what that is. And then you can start to build a strong network around you to help you navigate this. So you don't have to do it alone. You're here today to find those tools, to meet people. The second question that came up, and I think this is really frustrating and hard for a lot of us, is when we use a confident voice as a woman, it is viewed negatively. And I think for women of color, this can be much worse. And this was actually a question we got beforehand. How do you combat not only the stereotypes of being a woman in STEM and you're expected to be one way, and if you act another way, you get a negative backlash, but a Black woman in STEM, a lot of times my opinions and ideas for process improvements are not seen as legitimate, and I am stereotyped as a firecracker, or I'm seen as being abrasive. How do you overcome these biases that are placed upon you when you even try to act the way that the establishment wants you to?
Right. We're not exactly, to be clear, we're not exactly advocating that everyone tries to act how the establishment wants us to.
Yeah.
Again, I would respond to that, comment with again, it sucks. But also making empowered choices and looking at how am I presenting myself, and I'm going to choose and I recognize that these are the ways in which the deck is stacked against me, and I'm going to own it. I'm going to be that authentic part of myself, and I'm going to own it. I think, that when you waver and when you go back and forth and change, that's not good for you mentally. It's not good for your imposters coming back out. So again, I would say the answer is the same. The answer is understand those different elements of your privilege or lack thereof in different cases. Understand issues in our society that you may face based on your race, your gender identity, your ethnicity, and own that decision to be your authentic self.
That goes into another point someone brought up earlier. You have imposter syndrome, and let's say you have other factors that are outside your control. Maybe you have some sort of, for me, I have anxiety. So not only is it just like a normal day, but I also struggle with my anxiety, and I have to decide whether I talk about that out loud or do you keep that internal. And it's not the same for everyone. Not everyone wants to share. Sometimes it helps to share with people so they recognize what your deck is, per se, but other people aren't comfortable with that. So how can we think about navigating when it's not just like each person's individual person, I guess, the many whos I am?
Right. You're right. I think, sorry, I can hear your dog. Poor thing. It's okay. Tell her we said hi. No, don't apologize. Again, that's another great question. And I got a little distracted by the dog. I'm sorry. The many whos I am. The many whos I am, yeah. So again, I think our recommendation would be, one, to run through that exercise about who are these many whos I am, because we often, in our work, we've found that many women don't actually realize that, in Kelly, your example, I hadn't brought to the forefront of my mind that one of the whos I am who has anxiety and struggles with anxiety, I hadn't actually put her out there as part of myself and then thought about how do I want her to be part of my professional self. I haven't, gone through this purposeful discussion with myself in my head about what piece of her that Kelly that deals with anxiety am I going to bring to work and to collaborations. And so again, we're encouraging you to think through all of those many whos I am. Actually lay them out there, because when you haven't gone through that exercise, that all those different whos, like your imposter, they do come through in different ways. And we want you to think about, one, who are they? And two, like the exercise we did with the imposter, are there ways that who is coming across in ways that I don't want her to, or that I'm okay with that she comes across that way? So for me, I suffer from depression, and I am open about that, but I've made a conscious decision to be open about that at work, because for me, it's also part of my mentoring job, and I've connected that who about me as part of my job as a mentor for other graduate students and for other faculty, because I think it's an important discussion. But not everybody has to decide to bring that who into these work conversations. Yeah. So again, I apologize. It sounds like the same answer over and over again, but kind of is.
No, I think that's good. And someone else wrote in the chat earlier, another thing, we were talking about one example, but something that we have to think about, our cultural background can also influence how we act. Odie potato. Oh man, I'm sorry, it's so late here. So like how we stand can be influenced by where we grew up, our cultural background. And so being aware of that for ourselves, to know people will view that in a certain way, whether to adjust or not, or just let people know, I'm from this place, this is how we interact, this is how we shake hands, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's great.
How about one more question to finish? Sure. And I think this is kind of ties in with what this is from. I think this came up in the chat. How do we elevate and value collaboration along with other factors, maybe like teaching or teaching and mentoring, that aren't valued as strongly as, let's say, primary research and awards and funding? So like the typical things that we would think makes a good scientist, but there are all these other things that we know contribute to science, but they're not valued equally on a CV. which probably contributed to that terrible graph that we saw and people were very upset about. So do you guys have, how do we elevate those things and work towards that? We're at this place now. How do we move and change where we want and to a new place?
Right. So first of all, I would say keep doing the things that you're doing. I know that you're all doing awesome, really exciting things from outreach to your science, and keep doing it. Just because you might feel right now like the institution doesn't value it, we all value it. And so I would say then that my solution to that is, one, that we need to promote one another. This is what 500 Women Scientists is in part about, that we need to be engaged, and we need to, I need to put Pragya out there. I need to put my mentees out there. I need to promote them and all of these other cool things that they do that aren't that traditional, I published a paper, or, did that other thing. And then the other side of things is, and this is what Pragya and I are doing at the institution.
The institutional change.
Yeah, we all, and especially those of us who are more senior in our careers, we need to be a loud, strong voice for institutional change. So at Minds, we have a president who is excited about this change, who really values teaching, who really values outreach, and, he is supporting us and other people on campus to make changes to these policies, right? To literally put in promotion and tenure guidelines. Yeah, we care about your contributions to diversity and inclusion, and we are going to look at it hard, and we're going to give you tons of credit for all that work you did there. And also, by the way, we really care about teaching, and we're not going to judge you by one teeny little score anymore. We want to see your whole portfolio, because we think teachers are really valuable and important. And so it's both sides. I think wherever you are in your career, you can help promote other women who are doing these things outside of the traditional metrics. And at your institutions, wherever it is, find one thing to be part of that is that institutional change. We all have all sorts of committees. And in an academic institution, being part of Faculty Senate is where you get to change those rules. Being part of the President's Committee on the Status of Women is where you get to encourage the President, with all this evidence that we've given you, that we could give you, about why it's important to change these, because these are all valuable pieces of being a professor, being a scientist or an engineer. So other suggestions, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, so I think we're out of time. That last comment, that was really good. Pragya and Amy, thank you so much for leading this talk today, and thank you, Shreya, and the Union of Concerned Scientists. Yeah, thank you, Shreya, and the Union of Concerned Scientists for hosting us in this awesome webinar. If you want to enact change, awesome! If you guys want to enact change, hit us up, 500 Women Scientists or Union of Concerned Scientists. Send us all an email. We can start working today if you want. And I think that's it for everyone. Have a great day, and hope to see you on a webinar in the future, or on Twitter, or in our inboxes.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for sticking in here with us. And great job, Otis the dog.
Yeah, Odie Potato. Yeah, that was rough. Thanks, guys.
Bye.